Awesome, man. Well, I'm pumped for this. I've been listening to your content, like reading everything that you've been doing for months, but um, everything that you talk about with storytelling, I think is just so powerful. But maybe as a way to kick this off, can you just give a little bit of backstory on how you got into this niche and how you started telling your own story and all of that good kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, I started on X, or formerly Twitter, and I was writing about electricity because I had a podcast about electricity.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're aware or not, but obviously a lot of electricians don't like to read. So I was just kind of sending content out into the void there. So I did an exercise where I reached out to five people, friends and family members, and asked them what I was good at, and they said storytelling. And then there was another passage by Robert Greene in the book Mastery, where he talks about, go back into what you loved as a child. And
Mm.
yeah, I used to just love writing fiction all the time and letting my imagination flow. So it was kind of just a cross section in between to that. And it was just ultimately my curiosity.
That's super cool. So when you were, it's like so fascinating what you said about electricians not writing, like wanting to like read necessarily, right? Because don't like to pass your electrician exam, don't you need to like know like this insane amount of information and the books that you need to read for it and everything. I have a few friends that are electricians, but I mean like just the exams and the prep and everything like that are like require like a ton of reading, don't they?
Yeah, they do, but it's like it's weird. It's kind of like the code is written by these people that write it, so it's not easy to understand, so that they can like
Ah,
charge people to consult for it. Like
oh, gotcha.
it's not written in like it's not something that you just sit down and read. Like it's like I don't know, man. There's it's like very contradictory. A lot of like one passage will say one thing, another will say a different one, and they like do it on purpose. So like a company will pay them to find out what the real answer is. And like to be honest, a lot of the guys like there are things that you remember, like certain sections of code, but like otherwise it's like you kind of just cram it in for the test, unless you're super serious about it. But yeah, but like other than that, like it's very dry reading. Like I don't know, talking about
Yeah,
math and resistance and all that stuff, and like having a blog regarding it just wasn't like a good source. But I loved X and Twitter. I loved like the entrepreneurial spirit there, and like the amount of people with the like-mindedness and the similar drive. And I just saw the potential there, so it really excited me hopping on.
that's super cool. And like just going back to that the starting place, I love the way that you sort of frame that. You ask people, you know, what am I good at and where's my strengths lie? But storytelling was the thing that you consistently heard. Was that like because your skills verbally and just like your ability to tell a story like informally?
Yeah, pretty much. Like I started the electricity podcast and I told my friends and they're like, dude, I don't care about electricity. I care about your crazy stories. And I've just had friends and family say I should write a book on and stuff like that. So it was just kind of like something that was under my nose the whole time and ended up popping up. So
That's awesome. One thing that like I've noticed about like reading your content and like looking at your sales pages and things like that is like it seems to resonate with like such a massive broad audience, right? Like you've got people from, you know, you've got business leaders, you've got creators, you've got independent story, you've all these sort of like interesting sort of different people. Like when you're thinking about like who you're writing for or like your ICP or like those kind of things, like how do you think about that? Because your customer base seems like super broad.
yeah, I mean, it just depends on your strategy. Like it's great for a broad reach to grow a big audience and then obviously channel them into your newsletter. And it really just depends. Like you can shape a product into anything. Like right now I have a paid community where everyone joins and like I'm teaching them storytelling, digital storytelling to grow their audience and their online presence. But then there's also like you can do business consulting, business stories, commercials, advertising, and all that stuff. And so that's what's
Mhm.
cool about picking something that's like a general niche like that. I mean, you could have writing, for example, and there's like copywriting, there's fiction writing, and that's what's cool about having something like that. Like you want to pick something that you can do long term for 2 to 5 years and has multiple different avenues that you can experiment with. Because like I know a larger creator, large account that did Excel, and he's just kind of like pinned into a corner with Excel, right? And so yeah, it's just like you really want to pick something that is kind of general and broad, and that it's kind of malleable, that you can experiment with different things and see what works.
That's awesome. How have you sort of like in that sort of experimentation phases, like what have you learned as a byproduct of doing that? Has your focus changed in terms of like your core product offering and or the types of people that you're trying to serve?
Yeah, yeah, essentially, like I'm definitely experimenting with it. I've gone targeting creators, but then I know that there's like it's really interesting. Like the number one indicator of a stock's value is like the quality of a CEO speech, and the best way to give speeches is with a story. So like there's just all different kinds of avenues you can use, like storytelling, vocal teaching to CEOs for their
Mhm.
presentations and all of that. But right now, just trying to tightening my offer with like helping creators, helping them grow, and then just helping them make their content stand out with their personal story. I just believe everyone should be able to share their story and get enough attention on it if it's written right.
Yeah. That's super cool. And I think that's something that you just do like incredibly well. When you're thinking about like the frameworks of like what a good story are and the different pieces, and you've got, I mean, your posts on like your Hollywood post, your backstories where you'll do these different deep dives and threads on specific creators, like those I think just weave in some really important elements. But when you're looking at like your average creator, where are the opportunities that you see for just better storytelling to really sort of make them pop?
Yeah, it all depends. Like, it was becoming trendy to write like a personal story that's long form, but people wouldn't have a lesson into it. And
Hmm.
one of my favorite authors, Mark Manson, talks about how there's like victimhood chic and like how it's kind of cool to have been through trauma, even though everyone does go through it. So like I
Yeah.
just saw a lot of people like, oh, this bad thing happened to me, and there wasn't a lesson, there wasn't a takeaway, and it just kind of comes off like complaining. So it's like
Hmm.
just make sure there's one lesson. And then on the other hand, there's people that write, but they have like 4 or 5 different lessons in it, and becomes like a jumbled mess. It's like, okay, I don't know what I'm taking away from this. So like I think the biggest thing is just to say like, hey, I had this problem, I don't have this problem anymore, this is how I solved it, and here's the solution.
Yeah. Yeah. So simplicity, I think, in that sort of format, like one meta takeaway and really sort of focusing on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You had this like super cool thread the other day that really caught my attention around comedians. And and one thing that you mentioned there, which I thought was just like such a brilliant suggestion, is you talked about this benefit of unexpected twists, right? And it's like that misdirection, and like in comedy, that plays super well, right? It's like this person has this setup, and you think you know where it's going, and they just hit you with like this like twist, throws you off completely. How do you think about that when it comes to sort of like telling your own story or weaving that in with the narratives that you're putting together?
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting take because like as hunter gatherers and human beings, like we're just wired to detect change, and change in your environment could mean it's a predator, it could mean it's an enemy or something like that. And so basically it's just a super powerful trick to like tap into the psychology of your reader, to hold their attention, to grab their attention more, to persuade them. And so yeah, it's just like walking them on a journey. Like, you'll see people using their hooks, like juxtaposition, for example. It's like, this bad thing happened to me, and then something even worse happened, right? So you're heightening the stakes, things are getting worse. And then you'll see people put like, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And like by
Mm,
doing that, it's breaking expectations, and people just want to see what happened in between.
yeah, that's really cool. How do you think about like the driving the curiosity like with your own hooks? Because that seems to be something that you're really good at, and you seem to have this like ability capacity to like keep these open threads and open the sort of story and then sort of dive into it like later and sort of close it like maybe sort of like a how do you think about that sort of open loop driving curiosity and then like how do you close it right because I've seen the like people not do this well, so I'm curious on your take there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's just like hitting it, like you're poking at a problem that you had or someone had. Like, most people make this common mistake, and if you're making it, you're destroying your business, right? And it's like, okay, what's the mistake? And you're not telling them. And then it's like, here are the ramifications. Like if you're doing this, like you're wasting time writing, no one's paying attention to you, and even worse, like your business might fail. So it's like you're not telling them what that mistake is, but you're heightening the stakes of just saying how much it's affecting you, and then people get the fear of missing out, like, oh, am I
Mm,
making this mistake, what is it? And there's like another part of the human brain that like once a question is like posed to somebody, they have to know the answer to it. So it's
yeah.
like like, are you making this mistake, or is this happening to you? Is your engagement going down? Are you suffering from the algorithm? If so, your business might be falling apart, but don't worry, I have a simple solution for you. So it's like, yeah, just pretty much like telling them there's a problem, like making them problem aware, and then hinting
Yeah.
that there's a solution. So
Yeah. That's awesome, and a great way. I think a simple sort of framework for sort of how to think about that. Looking back on your own growth and things you've done, like I think you've had massive growth on Twitter and like in the last like year plus. You, I've seen you've been doing like awesome, great work on LinkedIn and that type of thing as well. How do you think about this, like that the top of funnel growth piece of it, and then sort of like juxtapositioning that with like, you know, positioning your offer and all these other sort of intricacies, because you seem to be doing both well. And like in the time I've followed you, I think you've actually gone from not having an offer and really sort of focused on that growth to like to dialing in something super high value with the storytelling, framework theme that you have right now, which looks awesome. But actually doing that while also growing on two different platforms with like what seems to be like a pretty broad audience.
yeah, yeah. So like I waited to monetize just because I know that the power of like a greater audience just gives you more leverage. So I wanted to make sure that I grew to a point. I'm friends with Kieran Drew, and I know that he waited till he was at like 25,000 followers. And I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss, and he talked about monetizing his podcast and the difference between monetizing at like 5,000 downloads an episode and 50,000. It's like he could get the same payment per download from the
Hmm.
sponsor, and he just talked about the price difference and at 5,000 downloads and 50,000 downloads, right? So like he'll get paid the same rate for each download, but if he just works on growing to 50,000, he still has to do the same amount of work when he's monetizing, but it has more of a reward, right? And so that's
Hmm.
kind of where I was at, because basically once you start focusing on monetizing and building your business in the back end, it takes up a lot more time and you can't focus on growth as much. So basically, if you're at 5,000 followers, you're going to be doing the same amount of work for less reward than at 25,000. So it's kind of that people talk about it, like the delayed gratification aspect of it. So I just wanted to make sure that I had enough audience and like a large enough newsletter that when I did monetize, it's worth it because it would be the same amount of effort to build the product and market it and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there a learning curve in terms of the creating that first offer and like nailing that, like doing that product market fit and all those types of pieces?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't have a background in marketing. I didn't go to college for that. Like, I was an electrician. And so, like, a lot of it was just play as you go. I mean, this whole
Yeah.
thing is like everything on social media is just like failure after failure after failure. But when you win, it's sweet. It's just kind of like taking it day by day. And I had no idea what I was doing when I launched it. I just kind of read a little bit and just said send it. Like, I wasn't expecting it to perform well at all. But I knew that like, okay, if I swung and I missed, at least I could say I tried it. That makes good content. I could study what happened and then try to tweak it and everything like
Hmm.
that. But I think a lot of it's just like saying send it and just building and doing it in public and sharing what you learn. And even if it didn't do as well, like you've got that experience that other people haven't, which, people want you to consult with them, like, okay, how did I do it? What do I do wrong? So, like on the other end, there's just having that experience is valuable in itself.
Yeah. No, totally agree. And what was like was there magic metrics that you were looking for like when you wanted to hit send on, on launching that first offer? Like, was there a certain amount of like subscribers for your email newsletter or?
No, not in particular. I actually had a small newsletter. I think like at the time when I started to launch and like ramp it up, I had like only 500 subs and about like a 20,000 member audience. But I'd saved up money and I quit my job. And so I was like, okay, I need to decide, I need to monetize this. I'm just going to give it a shot. I've got some runway with my savings. I'll see how it goes. And I just went from there. But what's crazy is like when you market it and when you do launch, even if you don't have a lot of sales, you end up being everywhere. There's certain strategies you can use to basically grow your audience super fast, which then in turn grows your newsletter super fast and gets you a lot more attention. Like you'll see creators when they're launching something, if they're marketing it right, they'll just grow so fast. They're getting so much attention from what they're doing. So
Yeah, that's and what are some of the strategies that you're using there, right? Because it does seem like you've just like a sort of exploded in growth, but like to me that seems like a mix of both, not just like your products, but also like just stellar content consistently that you've been putting out. So like, what are some of the strategies you were using there?
Yeah, absolutely. Like a lot of it's systematizing what you've done. Like I'm not organized and didn't track anything, but when I built the product, I like literally went through my entire process, kind of studied what I did, and then it's like reusing your content. Like you want to build content that's so good, like put in the extra hour of work when you're writing a thread or a long form, because if it does well, you can reuse it every 3 to 6 months. And
Hmm.
then it just circulates and it works for you. So basically I had this cache of 90 threads, some of them better than others, but I was able to basically dissect them, turn them all into content, and schedule them to a point where I didn't have to worry about making new content. So I basically just recycled all my best performing stuff. It did really well. I knew it would get attention, and then basically that just gave me a lot more, a lot more eyeballs on what's going on. I plugged in the wait list, and then also I know that X was doing like the watch time deal, so what I did is I took all my good threads and I added video to them, about 2 to 4 minutes of video, and then they just went mega viral. So they were just going viral over and over again because they'd done well before, but now with the video they were going super viral. I'd plug in the wait list and I just had a ton of people on my wait list, and then I would just start adding value to them, sending newsletters daily, like helping them, building trust with them, and then I launched the product. So that's like one way, but yeah, it's essentially my goal was just to have this 6 months worth of already written proven content that I can just recycle, and that
Yeah.
works for me. And then that's kind of what I've done to LinkedIn, is just take my best content, repurpose it over there, and just let it work for me there. And eventually I want to do it to Medium and just have a system where it's automated and it's doing all my marketing for me. It's working for me.
That's awesome. And I appreciate you diving into that a little bit. So you essentially took like your best performing threads, made some base edits to them, added video, and in some cases, it looks like also you've got some sweet gifs. You've got some other sort of things, and then you've like I've noticed too. You actually do like a custom video for the end of each thing to like ask for the retweet and that kind of thing. But that's content from like from that you've had in like the last 6 months that you've been repositioning and that type of thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's just like I said, when I started to make the product, like I would just analyze my what was working, what wasn't at
Mhm.
the end of the week, and just study what works. And then if something was good, like my threshold's above 100 likes, I would just schedule it in the future, and then just kind of see like when you start studying that, you kind of see like what problems resonate with people, what content resonates, and which ones don't. And you can kind of like, it's really just like a year of trial and error, and then like
Yeah.
honing in on what's working. And then that's kind of how I found the demand is like, okay, everyone's doing audience building, but how can I do like storytelling to build your audience? And what's the benefit of that? It's like you build trust and you deepen relationships because it's personable.
Yeah. That's really, really, really cool. If you had to think about just like thinking about your like how you spend your time in the week, if you could only spend like 10 hours on content creation, right? Which would suck, right? Because like as a creator, you're doing that. But if you had to really sort of like limit it and dial in, I've only got 10 hours, like where are you gonna focus it?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I've got a system where like I just study the market for problems. Like I've got a spreadsheet of like 300 problems that my potential audience has. I go to the Facebook groups and I search in quotations like how do I need help with, and I do it to in Reddit as well. And I basically just have this cache of problems. And if you see one person saying the problem, you know that dozens more are thinking it. And then sometimes I simply just ask, I'll tweet like, what are your biggest problems with storytelling? And I did it once and I got like 40 something replies of all these different answers that problems that people have. And so essentially, like, I'll just be like, okay, how can I solve this problem in a unique way? And so I'll look at those and I'll just use like tweets, and I'll write short stories. Like I'll do micro tweets where it's just like a micro story where it's like a person in a place. Like 3 years ago, I was in this situation. Next sentence is here's the problem. And I show how I resolved it. And then I kind of have like a lesson at the end. And so like I'm solving these problems with stories because stories get you more profile visits, and it's unique to myself. It's not like AI generated. And then basically whatever ones do well, I'll extend them into like long form or threads or even into emails. But basically, just systematizing it like that. And then once I have a proven story, I know it works, and I can extend it and reuse it and alter it in different ways.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love the fact that you're just starting with like real market research. Like, so you've got Reddit, you've got Facebook. Do you use like Quora or like some other tools for that as well, or is it like kind of mainly those two too?
I have used Quora a little bit, but yeah, I use Answer the Public as well. It's a really good
Oh yeah.
website. Yeah, like I'll just search storytelling, and people have, the most searched questions in regards to storytelling. And so like you have the most searched question on Google like about storytelling there, so I know that that will be a hit, and just essentially doing that. But I don't use Quora as much.
Yeah. That's super awesome. Yeah, I gotta check out that answer. That one is really incredible. There's some good stuff there. Um, so like switching gears a little bit, if you had to rewrite the curriculum for everybody, I think we've all had like those experiences in high school and you're like, you look back and you're like, why did I study this stuff? Or like, like this didn't really sort of do anything for me or whatever. Like for you personally, if you could just rewrite curriculum for everybody in the United States, like how would you think about that? Like what would be the things that you'd want them to sort of think about or learn to position them to, do whatever they were going to do?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of foundational stuff. I mean, obviously, like communication skills, being able to speak and being able to write. I think sales writing is really great. I wish I knew copywriting at school. It's just something that fascinates me. You can persuade people, influence them, motivate them with your writing. So, like, obviously, communication, like the most successful people in the world are master communicators. But then also, like, how to make money, and then like marketing and sales are really big ones that I wish I had learned more about. Yeah, and I think those would just be the main ones: learning how to communicate, learning how to market, learning how to sell, and eventually like build products. But I think those are like the most foundational skills.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree there. Um, you seem to like have this like really sort of crafted ability to like evoke emotion with the types of like content that you're putting out. How do you think about that, right? Like, because I think you've got like great archetypes and really sort of great content for like and formats for like how do you tell the story effectively and sort of bridge in these different pieces. But how do you think about that emotional aspect of pulling people in to to the story and having them take some ownership in it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of different ways. Like obviously, copywriting is like making your writing conversational, like asking them the questions, like "Have you ever felt this way?" And then like kind of driving it home, like "Did you ever feel shy? Did you ever feel alone? Did you ever feel insecure?" And like and then kind of get more specific on it. Like I was on a cohort as a guest the other day, and it's like you know then you could, instead of saying like I was shy, I was insecure, it's like that feeling you get at your first day of work when you don't want to talk to anyone, you don't know anyone, or like you're the new kid in school, like that feeling. And when you're asking them that, like that's a feeling that people can resonate with, right? Like, or if you're in trouble, like, oh, I had that feeling of when I went to the principal's office, or like, my parents caught me smoking weed, that feeling. And it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's something that really like people resonate with. It's a commonality. And then my other favorite tactic is like there's the two heroes journeys, which Michael Hogg, it's a term that he coined, and it's like what external events impact your internal feelings, and then what
Hmm.
like internal actions like affect your external world, right? So like me getting hit by a car would make me feel terrible because then maybe I can't work, right? So that's like an external event happening to me that makes me feel a certain way inside. And then so you want to have that be relatable to whoever your audience, right? So it's like, oh, I was just hitting tweets and I was just publishing into the void, which is a certain language that people use, right? And I felt like lost. I felt concerned. I felt like a loser. But then you could be like, if say you're angry and it's like, oh, I got pissed off about something and I lashed out at my boss and then I got fired. So it's like kind of being able to bounce the two and saying like this internal action caused this external event, or this external event made me feel a certain way.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And what's the framework for that one called again?
Yeah, so it's the hero's two journeys,
The
and it's just
hero's
like
two journeys.
the journey on the outside and the journey on the inside, and like how they both affect each other.
Yeah, that's a really powerful, I think, takeaway for anybody that's trying to sort of learn and study different pieces. Um, what's coming down the pike for you? I mean, you've got these incredible content that you're putting out. you've got some really cool offers that you're doing. But when you think like long term about like where you see this going, or the types of things that you'd like to position yourself for, where's your mind go?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I did a private launch for this paid community that I have, and it's a really cool place where everyone gets to share their stories. I review them, I edit them. There's like a master class inside that's self-paced, and we do like live calls with guest speakers, and they're becoming better and better, like bigger and bigger guests as far as like storytellers and different aspects. And I'd really like to scale that to be like the epicenter of like digital storytelling. And then content-wise, once I hit 100K on like LinkedIn or Twitter and have my writing be everywhere and have like blog and Medium set up in my newsletter, I'd like to transition to video and then just kind of take all those lessons that I learned and put them into this paid community where if someone's like, I want to learn, I want to be on YouTube, but I don't know how to grow on YouTube and I want to learn how to tell stories on it, like there's that section in there. And then just kind of have that be the epicenter. So
Yeah,
that's the big goal.
that's awesome. Yeah. So it sounds like getting to like 100K and then eventually sort of making the sort of jump to video, and then having, I think, paid community that just is almost kind of like John Brozio's like complete creator thing. But it sounds like a totally different value proposition where you've got this like holistic community of people that are sort of supporting and sort of, building digital identity and all that good stuff on there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's the power of writing and like starting on X is like each tweet is just a market test. It's an idea test that gets verified or not. And then like after a year, you have all these verified ideas that you can extend on. You can put them onto other platforms and they perform better because you learned how to write. You know, the ideas work. And like that's kind of what Dan Coe did is like had all these ideas, uses them as scripts for YouTube now. And it's like then you just have this base of content and proven ideas that you can just grow off of and kind of overlap into different platforms.
Yeah, that's super cool. Parker, where can people find you, learn more about you? Like, what's the best places to connect?
Yeah, absolutely. On X and LinkedIn, my handle is at Worth WRTH_Parker. And then if you want to sign up for my newsletter, when you sign up, you get a free gift, and it's just parkerworth.com.
Awesome, awesome. Hey, thanks so much for your time today. It's been awesome talking to you.
Yeah, yeah, it was a lot of fun, man. It's nice to meet you, and I appreciate your time. You did awesome.
Awesome, thank you.